The white bones on the ground are palpable. From the posture and clothes of the bones when they were dying, Ling Xun could tell at a glance that these should be slaves who were caught for mining. Ling Xun squatted on the ground, picked up a piece of dark red bone and looked at it. He knew in his heart that these people should have been poisoned by the blood of the red-blooded bat and died. Thinking about what he had encountered along the way, Ling Xun was also a little concerned. These dead slaves were all ordinary people. How could they resist the attack of the red-blooded bat? Without feeling too much, Ling Xun searched around, and sure enough, on one side of the rock wall, he found caves shaped like honeycombs, which were densely packed. This should be the nest built by the red-blooded bat. Ling Xun stepped forward and could easily see that in each nest, there were piles of fangs that were as fine as white sand. This is blood marrow sand, only the size of gravel, snow white as jade. Holding it in the hand with a hint of coldness, snapped. Ling Xun picked up a blood marrow sand, pinched it with his fingertips. The white shell of the blood marrow sand was broken, and a bright liquid like a flame flowed out. Seeing this, Ling Xun couldn't help but be excited. There are no less than 1,000 nests nearby, and each nest is filled with blood marrow sand. If all of them are collected, it will definitely be an amazing wealth. Ling Xun acted without hesitation, peeled off some rags from a white-boned corpse on the ground, sat in a cloth bag, and began to search for blood marrow sand. After a full cup of tea, all the blood marrow sand had been scavenged, and the cloth bag in Ling Xun's hand had become heavy, at least 5 pounds. Ling Xun smiled. With this bag of blood marrow sand, at least for a period of time, he would no longer have to worry about money. Just as Ling Xun was about to leave, he glanced inadvertently, and when he passed a rock wall at the end of the mine, he immediately let out a sigh. He stepped forward and tapped on the rock wall, as if remembering something, holding the sky-breaking knife, and slashed the rock wall with the blade. With a rustling, the rock debris fell, and a 4-finger-deep crack appeared. Ling Xun dipped a little rock powder on the crack with his fingertips, twisted it lightly, and a slight heat spread on his fingertips. Ling Xun's eyes lit up. The blade in his palm continued to dig, and when he dug more than a foot deep, a faint red halo appeared in his field of vision. This made Ling Xun overjoyed again. After digging for about half a kai, a mottled red stone was dug out. This stone is the size of a fist, with a rugged surface, and a red-like fire color in the middle that is quite eye-catching. Ling Xun raised his knife and cut the stone into pieces. Soon there was only a thumb-sized piece of fire copper left in the palm of his hand. The surface of the fire copper was dense with haze, bright red and delicate. Although it was only the size of a thumb, it was heavy, and it weighed 7 or 8 pounds. Sure enough, the fire copper ore in this mine has not been excavated completely. Ling Xun smiled, just glanced casually, but noticed that the rock wall was quite dry, quite different from the cold and wet environment around. This anomaly made his heart move, and he guessed some reasons, so he started to dig the rock wall. And he found this thing. This is simply a surprise. Fire copper, this is a kind of spiritual material for refining weapons. It is tempered with 100 refined steel. The forged weapons are sharp, flexible and hard. If you can engrave a fire-type spirit pattern on it, you can exert more power. In terms of value, although fire copper is not as expensive as blood marrow sand, it is more popular with cultivators. Blood marrow sand, fire copper ore vein. Ling Xun took a deep breath and calmed himself down. In the end, he did not dig fire copper ore, but returned along the mine. He knew very well that it was simply unrealistic to dig out the fire copper ore in this mine with his own strength alone. Therefore, this matter must be discussed with the village chief Xiao Danren. Ling Xun is not a greedy person. Now he lives in Fian village, and he has inherited many favors from Xiao Danren. This favor must be repaid. It wasn't until the afternoon that Ling Xun returned to the village alone, carrying a bag containing blood marrow sand. But just as his figure appeared at the entrance of the village, a little kid who was playing next to him shouted loudly, turned his head and ran towards the village. It's back. Uncle Lingzon is back. He's not dead. The childish voice was full of surprise. Lingzon was startled, a little puzzled. He quickly stepped forward and walked in a hurry. Not long after he saw a group of people walking towards this side. Mighty. The leader was Xiao Tanren, and the rest were villagers in the village. Sun Mazi could be seen in the crowd, being bound by Zuzong and others, and escorted like a prisoner. In an instant, Lingzon had vaguely understood, and immediately stepped forward, smiled and bowed to Xiao Tanren. Uncle Xiao. Xiao Tanren's face was full of eagerness, but when he saw Lingzon came back intact, he was relieved and smiled. Is the matter resolved? Lingzon smiled and nodded. He knew that Xiao Tanren was asking about Qianqi and Luting. Xiao Tanren let out another long breath, patted Lingzon on the shoulder, and said, "Okay. Well done, well done." Seeing this scene, how could the other villagers not understand that Qianqi and Luting would never come back in this life? For a while, they looked at Lingzon with a hint of shock. Qianqi is a cultivator of the third-level real martial arts, and he is not Lingzon's opponent. This is so shocking. At this time, Xiao Tanren pointed to Sun Mazi, who was tied up by the 5 flowers, and said, "Sun Mazi has already recruited for today's matter. What are you going to do with it?" Sun Mazi had a bruised face and a sullen expression. Hearing this, he cried out with a sad face, "I was really forced." Then Qianqi said that if I didn't agree to this, they would kill my 3-year-old child. I was also forced to be helpless. At the end, he couldn't help crying. Many villagers couldn't bear it. Sun Mazi was an old and hard-working man. It would be impossible to say that he took the initiative to conspire with Qianqi and Luting to harm Lingzon. Lingzon's eyes swept away everyone's expressions, and he knew it in his heart. He smiled and said, "This matter has nothing to do with Big Brother Sun. Everything is forced, and this junior asks Uncle Xiao to let him go." Xiao Tanren also breathed a sigh of relief. Of course he knew the whole story. Seeing that Lingzon didn't mean to pursue it to the end, he stopped being persistent and waved to let Sun Mazi go. Thank you, brother Lingzon." Sun Mazi was so excited that he was at a loss, so he was about to kneel and kowtow, but was stopped by Lingzon, who comforted him a lot. "Okay, Lingzon has returned safely. Everyone should leave." Xiao Tanren waved his hand. In the courtyard of Lingzon's house. While eating, Lingzon recounted what happened today, but did not mention the discovery of Fire Copper Mine. Xiao Tanren next to him learned of all this and looked at the 13-year-old boy who was concentrating on eating. He couldn't help but feel a little shocked. Qianqi has traveled from south to north, and he has rich experience in bloody battles. He is second only to Lian Rufing's master, but now he has been killed by Lingzon, who is 1 level lower than him. So how strong is this Lingzon's fighting power? The most important thing is that this time it was not only Qianqi who shot, but also Luting. Under the attack of the two of them, Lingzon still couldn't help it. It is conceivable how strong Lingzon's fighting power is. Could it be that this is the genius of excellent aptitude that the cultivation world calls him? Xiao Tanren's heart was up and down, and it was difficult to calm down for a long time. If it wasn't confirmed by Lingzon himself, he almost couldn't believe it. "Uncle Xiao, when I entered the abandoned mine tunnel in the hinterland of the Lian Mountain this time, I had an unexpected harvest." After eating, Lingzon picked up the pocket next to him, and with a bang, a pile of blood marrow sand filled the table, white and sparkling, like crescents made of sand. Xiao Tanren wondered, "This is?" Lingzon was stunned for a moment, but soon realized that Xiao Tanren didn't recognize this object, and explained patiently, "This is blood pulp sand. The fangs shed from the mouth of a red-blooded bat are a kind of high value in cultivation. Spiritual material." Xiao Tanren really didn't recognize the blood marrow sand, but he knew about the red-blooded bat. In Xiao Tanren's memory, the red-blooded bat was a bloodthirsty monster. Most of the slaves who dig the Fire Copper Mine lost their lives in the mouth of this murderous creature. This is also the reason why, over the years, no villager has ever been willing to approach that abandoned mine tunnel. knowing that there are red-blooded bats scattered there. Lin Xun smiled and said, "Uncle Xiao, don't worry, all those evil animals have been killed." Killed? Xiao Danren was shocked, and his head felt a little dazed. After a long while, he smiled bitterly. "Don't blame me for losing my temper. What happened today really surprised me." Lin Xun also understood that although Xiao Danren was the village chief, in the final analysis he was just an ordinary person who didn't know how to practice. In his eyes, there is no difference between a red-blooded bat and a demon. After calming down, Xiao Danren said, "Hurry up and put away these blood marrow sands. Now you are the only cultivator in our Fian village. You can't take these treasures out for others to waste." It can also be seen from this sentence that Xiao Danren no longer regards Lian Rufing and others who are still out of town as his own. At the same time, Xiao Danren's behavior also proves that he really cares about Lin Xun. If other people heard that the value of these blood marrow sand is amazing, I'm afraid they can't help but want a piece of the pie. But Xiao Danren didn't. That's why he already regarded Lin Xun as his own. Lin Xun did not refuse, and because of Xiao Danren's remarks, he immediately made a decision. "Xiaobo, there is actually another happy event." With that said, Lin Xun took out the thumb-sized piece of Fian fire copper and handed it over. "I found a vein of Fian fire copper that hasn't been excavated yet." Puff! Xiaotan spit out a sip of tea and was stunned. He was shocked too many times today.